Okay, so on this special bonus episode of the Three Pillars of D&D Cast, we're going to go and show you how to make the Mage of Quandrix subclass to use in D&D Beyond, because I was listening to their update, and they had decided they weren't going to make the subclasses in D&D Beyond because they wanted to make sure they had the time to get it right. And I understand that to a certain degree, especially after making a couple of the different subclasses myself. I can see where they would run into some stumbling blocks.
Still think it's a bit ridiculous that they can't, make it. It would take a day or two to make all the subclasses.
Well, yeah, but do you want to spend your man hours making the subclasses and have things that you simply can't get around and fix? Because I found things that you kind of had to do in a weird way to make them work, and they're not exactly right. Or do you want to spend those man hours making sure they get things right for when they come out?
I
And
guess.
it's a hard choice because based on the fact that I could make them, I know it's possible to do it without adding new coding to the system. At least with the two subclasses I've made.
Yeah, and I think what they're trying to do is they want to add a new system for the homebrew so people can make their own multi subclasses.
Yeah, I mean, adding a cross class system into D&D Beyond, where you can make subclasses of the cross class style, is going to be a complete rewrite of the system.
Yeah.
There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Just all the little details you have to have right in order to make it work that we'll be going over today. We'll show you why that's an easier said than done kind of a project. But at the same time, you could just do what we did, which was make the subclasses for each of the classes separately, and they'll function relatively the same. So there we go. So that's basically what we're gonna try to do today. So, all right. The College of Quandrix. Obviously, this is our math related school. They kind of run on the whole dichotomy of natural learning, the natural world, and like the things you can learn to manipulate the natural world. So I suppose that's general. I think that's how you would phrase it. And this picture actually does a pretty good justice. The campus really pulls that off. I love the floating. I love the floating cubes and
Yeah, all the
stuff like that.
shapes of Quandrix and how they really use shapes. I think that's so cool. They really explore a lot of sides of math.
Yeah, and
You know.
I really like how they really focus on that, and I think it's fun. I think it's a really fun school. And of course, this
Yeah.
is the one where, in all honesty, if we were in the world, we would be there. Like this would be the college for us because it would be the one that would click the easiest for us as
Yeah.
giant math nerds.
Yeah, that's fun, dude.
Yeah. So I mean, as much as I would like to I'd like to be Prismari. Like there's a part of me I'd like to be that creative, drama kid. I'm not. I would probably feel right at home in Quandrix. I like what the subclass brings to Dungeons and Dragons. It has more of that teleportation and magic feel to it than I think that almost any other subclass I've seen has done. Like especially in the velocity shift ability. I really enjoy that one. I think that's really fun that you can teleport yourself or you can teleport an enemy, and I think that has a lot of fun uses. I would say in with just in the right campaign at the right time. I just see that being a lot of fun. The functions of probability ability I is something that's been kind of done before. It's sort of bardic.
I mean, it's pretty. I thought that's I've gone back and forth on it. It's at first I thought it was good, and I thought it was bad. Now I'm like a neutral.
Yeah, no, I feel the same. I think I'd have to really play it to see how I feel about it. I do like the fact that you can just use it whenever you use a spell. I mean, I don't,
There's not necessarily a combat thing, which is good.
which is good, yeah. And so there's a lot of other, like, since it helps you with saving throws or ability checks, right? Yeah, I think it does. And not just combat attack rolls. Yeah, there's something to it. You can use it to try to sabotage an enemy who's, say, chasing after you. Or you're going against a rival school and you're each trying to get the special object in the dig site or something like that. Whatever you happen to be doing, you can do something that make it harder for them, and then make it harder for them to succeed on their next deck save to jump to the next platform or something like that. I mean,
That jerk named Brad is about to take a test. You can cast a spell and then use the minus thing to make sure he rolls lower.
exactly, yeah, because
I
screw
think that's the
Brad.
most. Oh yeah, because these are meant to be played in a school setting. Combat's probably gonna be pretty low. So with these subclasses, you really have to evaluate how they work in a school setting. That's what's
Exactly.
important.
And I mean, and that's the thing that what I like about these abilities is they go outside of this normal, just all about combat feeling to them. There's a lot of good flavor for that role playing and exploration that you should be exploring more in a campaign. I think in Strixhaven.
Yeah.
I mean, I like quantum tunneling too. I mean,
Yeah, that one's really strong.
yeah, I feel
Um,
like there could be some really great role playing moments for that particular ability.
yeah, it's like I love abilities that are kind of like meant to like make dramatic scenes. I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, imagine your character is making that like ultimate sacrifice because it does a lot of damage to you in order to save the whole rest of the party or to save the school or
Yeah,
whatever.
because to be fair, they could probably save themselves.
Yeah,
They have quantum tunneling and teleportation.
exactly. But like one of the limitations of velocity shift, for example, is that you can only go places you can see, and quantum tunneling
Yeah.
lets you get around that, and that's a really big difference. And like I said, since you get that more teleportation magic and space and time kind of changes thing, like not time so much, but you know what I mean, kind of feel to it. It gives that us an extra dimension that we haven't quite gotten the full feeling for. I know that some of the World Amount books had the chronology and the graviturgy magic schools and the subclasses that went with those that kind of touch on it a little bit too, but I like how they've done it in this particular campaign setting. Assuming they don't change it from when the books come out.
And the art, the design of the school, I think it's perfect for math because almost all of them like have like they're like circles. It's obviously geometry, pi. Floating cubes. The cones. Cones have their own formula. The giant arches. Everything is here is math.
Oh, I know,
Uh,
and I love the symmetry of it all, like balancing the
yes.
equation, that whole
Uh-huh.
feeling. And the roads feel fully functional, but at the same time feel really pretty with the way they've
Yeah.
set the roads up. I mean, I like the archways and stuff like that they have that I didn't notice. There's some archways in the background, and there's some archways up front too that you can kind of see that go over the road and
Yeah.
everything. Like you get that
Yeah,
feeling of the water and earth.
I love symmetry, so this it just feels great to me.
So we're going to go through each of the steps of making the Mage of Quandrix and pulling this document out basically and making it into a subclass. First, we're going to start with I'm going to do the Sorcerer because it's the harder of the two, and then afterwards I'll kind of go over the differences. So we're going to start with Sorcerer, and we're going to go ahead and create it from scratch. Well, we're gonna create the subclass from scratch. When I originally made this, I based it off the templating of the sorcerer because I wanted to make sure I didn't screw
Mm.
things up. But we're gonna make it from scratch just to kind of show you how to do that. Start with the name. The version is completely optional. I'm actually gonna call this version. I'm actually gonna we'll go ahead and call this version
Mm.
2 since I already have one. I pulled the short description and the description both from the document. The nice thing about creating something that someone else has already done is it's a lot less thinking and on your own part, but it's something you can do. So the spellcasting ability for sorcerers is charisma, so we're going to stick with that. And what we're going to do is make sure we're going to hit can cast spells of no. Now, this subclass obviously can cast spells, but the only time you want to use the yes function on here is if it's a class that normally doesn't cast spells, like rogue, fighter. About it, right?
Rogue fighter.
Yeah. And you want to make a subclass like Arcane Trickster or Eldritch Knight, you're going to want to put yes on here. A lot of times you can leave these kind of things blank when it comes to D&D Beyond because you only need to use what you need to use. But there's a problem in the system where if with some subclasses, sometimes when you make new ones, if you just leave this blank, it'll say that it'll throw up an error to the effect of like you don't have abilities mapped at appropriate levels, even though you've already done all that. It's a weird error. They obviously haven't been able to fix it because it happened to me when I was making this one, but it didn't happen to me when I made a different subclass. So just get yourself in the habit of adjusting this particular setting. And then we're going to go ahead and create the subclass. And then we're going to start adding features. So first we're going to add a class feature. And we're going to go ahead and start with the Quandrix spells. Name. Now, the part where it says snippet here, it is optional on just about, every snippet section is optional. But what the snippet section is the thing that shows up on the character sheet. So this is important if you want your character sheet to look a certain way. If you look at how the other subclasses are made, just make a copy of it and look at them. This is filled in most sections with something because you kind of want your character sheet to be expressive of what's going on. Try to use this if you can think of something worth putting here. Snippets will also have the benefit of you can put what they call snippet codes in here, and I'll link a forum page that has a lot of the snippet codes that you can use. They pull information from the character sheet that they're on and make sure that things line up. Like they'll pull the characters spell saves and spell attack, proficiency bonus, things like that. So you can have those show up in the character sheet with the right things instead of just saying use the character's proficiency bonus. It'll just use the character's proficiency bonus right there and tell you what it is. It makes things easier, a little faster when you're using the sheet. Next, since the spells of the Quandrix spells show up on a table, as you can see here in the UA, we want to have that same kind of table up in D&D Beyond. What we're going to do is go to source code here, and with source code you can add little extra things that you couldn't normally add, like a table in D&D Beyond. Now I'm pulling all this stuff from a document that I've created on how to make these characters, so we'll have a link to those documents so you can just copy and paste for yourself, save yourself the hassle of having to do it the long way. This table is the easiest table I found. Basically, it starts with table class equal compendium left align table. And then it has all these little code snippets, table head, table row, and then like these then the TH gives me the table head text, and then it kind of goes left to right. And just to kind of show you what it looks like, that's what it looks like here. Now, a couple other things that pop up in this, you'll see these where paragraph begin, paragraph end. That's what those little P's mean. And then this little EM here, this is the code for basically your italics. Now when it says spell, and then it has at the end of the spell, I have this / spell as well here. That's telling the system to look it up in D&D Beyond. So when you hover over the words, when you're looking at the compendium page, it will actually pop up that spell and you can see it. That's what those little things mean. And that's why it'll show up in purple, because the spell tag basically has it show up in purple. I believe green is for condition effects, and I think skills are yellow or red. I can't remember which one it is. So yeah, if you just kind of go through here, this is a real simple table. You can kind of see where each thing falls into. We have our different levels and things like that. It's just building back and forth. Once you copy one in, so say you want to make your own subclass and you just want to copy this table, you can actually pull this table in here and make edits to it, and they will stay. Like if I wanted to change this to fourth, well, if I could type fourth level, I could do that if I wanted to. So don't be afraid to kind of like take these resources and run with them. Every once in a while, when it comes to the source code, you'll see this really weird thing where like this is the word doesn't, and this part here where it has and RSQUO semicolon, that basically means apostrophe. You don't have to use any of those source code things. You can just use the apostrophe here. It will actually read it just fine. It just pops up sometimes. It doesn't really hurt anything. This right here that I'm highlighting, and NBSP semicolon, that just means a space. Sometimes the program will automatically just pop those in there. I don't actually know why. You can change them, and it doesn't hurt anything here. It pops up just fine. You can use them, you can not. So it gives you a lot of options. So next we're going to have a required class level for this feature, and we want the display order to be the first one as it shows up in the character builder. So we're not going to hide this in the builder. We're not going to hide it in the character sheet. We could hide this in the character sheet if you wanted to. If that's the case, you probably don't want to have anything in the snippets here. If you hide it in the sheet, yeah, the snippets will do you no good. We want this to be a granted feature. This is because of Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. You can actually build in features that are considered additional or replacement features. If a person has the Tasha's option set up, you can actually have like various different builds or whatever, kind of like how the ranger set up now in the class features. You can do that with subclasses if you wanted to. I haven't come across a reason to use them yet, but it's nice to know that we have the option. And this is one of those things you have to do as well. So I'm going to create the class feature.
Hello, I'm still here.
All good.
You've been talking for a while.
I have been. So next we put the spells in a nice table, and that looks pretty and all that. But if you actually want the character to have them, like especially with the sorcerer, you really need to add the spells. So we're going to add a spell, and the first one we're going to add is guidance, because that's a cantrip you get. Now we don't need to do any of this other stuff pretty much. What we are going to need to do is whether it consumes a spell slot or not, and guidance is not, and we don't want it to count as a known spell, so we'll go ahead and hit no here. It's going to be available at character level 1, because the sorcerers is when you get your subclass, so 1 will be the one it's available at. Then we can just go ahead and hit save and move on. That's all we really have to do, and what that'll do is it'll put that right onto the character sheet. Now, another thing about the Mages of Strixhaven UA is the spells that you get are actually given to your character on the Sorcerer and the Warlock and the Bard as known spells. So they're actually making your spell list bigger, which makes them kind of the three subclasses that do that, make them kind of really powerful. So we can go ahead and add those in as well. Some of the other subclasses that were made, back in the day didn't do that. So we wouldn't have done this particular method, but because of how they're constructed, we have to do it this way. Now, Guiding Bolt does use a spell slot, but it doesn't count as a known spell. If you were to count it as a known spell for the Sorcerer, that would mean that it would count against a number that they actually know. So, like the amount of spells they get to learn would be drastically reduced by force feeding them these, and that's not good either. I actually wanted to go ahead and stipulate this was available at character level 1. It may not be necessary, but I've seen it built into a lot of them. The sorcerer subclasses before always had these set as always prepared. That's not necessary either, but I think they were just kind of doing that as a matter of course. We have next, we're going to add enlarge reduce. That will also consume a spell slot. I'm going to say it's a not a known one, and that's also going to be, that's actually level 3 one, isn't it? Save. So we're going to keep adding those on there. All right, so you can see it takes a little while, but you can get all those spells added in there. That's going to be how you do that. Like, this is commonly referred to, creating the spell casting ability or something like that into a character sheet. So there's the meat and potatoes of that. We're going to cancel back out of here, and then we're going to make our next class feature.
We should take a break.
We should take a break.
Yeah. So we'll see you guys after the break.
All right.
Although you won't see me.
Because we never
Enigma.
see you.
In shadow.
Oh, squirrely one. All right, so welcome to the break. This is the shameless plug part. We're going to plug the fact that we have a podcast that we usually run called the Three Pillars of DnD Cast. It's a YouTube series and it's also a podcast, so find that wherever you look for wonderful podcasts. If you want to get a hold of us, email us at ourdorkyfamily@gmail.com. And we also have a fairly active on Twitter at ourdorky. That's pretty much it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get back to the show. Our next class feature is called Functions of Probability. So here is I have an example of a snippet that uses some code that uses some actual snippet codes. Right here we have save DC of charisma. It's the brackets, but not the parentheses actually are going to just show up on the actual character sheet. The bracket part is going to be your save DC that's based on your charisma. And it's just going to show that number in there instead of saying how it says spell save DC. We'll actually have 13 or 15 or whatever will show up here. So then we have our first level Quandrix ability of functions of probability. Now I like this particular ability for the purposes of showing you on a character sheet. Like we discussed in our video that this wasn't our favorite ability, but one of the things that's unique about this is it doesn't use any of your actions to do it. It's not a bonus action or anything like that, but it's going to show, so we're going to have to make this into a special action that we show on the character sheet. So we kind of want you to know you have it and to highlight it on the character sheet. So we're going to go through the actions of making that. We're going to finish our required class level of 1. This is going to be on the second display order, and it's going to have the granted class feature type. So we're going to add an action. So this we're going to call it a general one because we don't really have a weapon or spells associated with. There's different little rules that go with those. Keep that in mind when you're using them. General just kind of lets you do what you want. We can just put our name in here. We can skip almost all of this because it's more just show it on the character sheet. So we're going to use the snippet part to really show what it does. All the other things are just don't really work with this particular ability. It is a reaction. It does not have a reset type. We'll add a little snippet in so that you can see what's on the character sheet. Description is not necessary. You'll notice that in most screens the description is necessary. I think the reason why that is because it's really not going to show up on the character sheet here. It's I think that's why it has more of an optional function to it, but pop it in there just in case I'm wrong about that. We have created that special feature for the character sheet. So then we can back up out of here. All right, well, let's see. Let's make our next one. Next, we have Velocity Shift. Pop that in there. This one also uses a save DC charisma snippet code as well. But the difference between this one and the last one is that with Velocity Shift, you only get to use a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all the expended uses when you finish a long rest. So when we make the action, it's going to be a lot different. I started doing this with my subclasses recently because they started adding them into the new subclasses they make, and I think it makes the compendium just look nicer. So I'm trying to stick to doing that. So this is required class level 6. Display order is going to be 3, and it will be granted as well. So move on to there. We're going to go ahead and make that action. It's going to be real similar to the last one. So it's going to be in general, velocity shift. Its activation type will be reaction, and its reset type will be long rest this time. We're going to put the snippet in there so it shows up on the character sheet. We'll throw a quick description in there. Sometimes when you right click here, it won't let you do a paste, which is weird. So then you want to use your shift insert or your control V to pop it in there. Just something to remember. We're going to have to save that, but we're going to have to go back into it because we weren't able to set how many times you could use it. So after you create it that first time, if you set a reset type here, the limited use will show up here. After you create it the first time, you'll also see level overrides show up here as well. So first I'll go over to limited uses. I'm going to add limited uses. So here you can just set a base number for it, whatever you want to do. You can actually have it modified by a particular stat, and you can have it add by the stat or multiply by the stat. And here you choose the stat you'd want to use. So like say I'm making a sorcerer ability. If I wanted to use charisma and I wanted to have it, say, you use it twice, but you get to add a number of uses equal to your charisma, that's how you'd set it up. If I wanted to have it 2 times the amount of charisma modifier you had of uses, that's how you would set it up. That's not how this one's going to work, so we're going to reset all those their base versions. What we're going to do is use proficiency bonus. You just click that when you have it set to 0, and it will add your proficiency bonus to the number of uses, and there you go. There's a part of me that knows that there's a good mathematical way to calculate the minimum use of 1, but I'm not sure how to make that work in here. If I was writing code, I could probably do it, but eventually they add some kind of minimum 1 feature into that limited use data. I think that would be a really useful function they could throw in there if anyone from DnD Beyond is paying attention to this. Now,
oh wait, actually, can you go back into the limited use thing?
oh yeah, certainly.
You said you wanted to see if there's a way to add a minimum. It might just add the minimum automatically. I don't know, of course, but you should probably test that.
Yeah, I should look into that. Maybe
It-
that is built in. Yeah, I'll have to
yeah.
test that out later and see how that works. But if there isn't, there should be, and if it's already built in, then good job. Everything should have a minimum of 1 use, in my opinion. It'd be really weird to give someone an ability they couldn't use. Now we're not going to use any level overrides, but I kind of wanted to talk about them a little bit here. With a level override, you can choose a level that you want the override to happen on. So 1 through 20. And then here you can change like the damage dice it does, like how many there are. That's the dice count, the dice type. And then, or a fixed value that it changes by with each one. You can change the range, you can change the long range. Say it's like a, weapon attack of some sort. The activation type, you can change it from being, say, an action to a bonus action, or something like that. The activation time, I can't remember what that one does actually. I have the top of my head right now. And then the reset type, you can change it from like long rest or dawn to short rest, or I suppose you could make it longer if you wanted to, but
Activation time is just how long it takes to activate it. Like,
yeah.
1
Oh,
minute in
1 minute, 1 round.
action.
Okay, 1 action.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Sorry. You're right. That's exactly what it is. And then you can also limit, it also removes limited use. So you can make something unlimited at some point. You can do these all levels. That way, if you really want to get in the nitty gritty with your subclass and have it do a lot more, you can. Speaking of which, the other things that we're not going to go over is here you can set like an ability score type, and that's going to be basically what is going to determine the DC or the hit of the spell or ability, and the proficiency is going to do the same thing. The level is going to be like, I believe that's the minimum level you have to be before it works, or what level it casts it at. Just for the love of me, I can't remember which one it is. You have, your attack range, you have your save type. These are all things you see in spells. So just imagine how they apply to other things. Right now, you can't do the effect on a miss, effect on a save, but if you have, when you throw in a save type, you see how the effects on save success will show up. That you can type words in there, and effect on a save fail words as well. So some of these features won't open up until you open up other features. You can have the weapon attack subtype, you can have the damage type, displays attack, all these different little things. In future videos, when I go over different subclasses, we'll get a little more use of these. So next we're going to add another class feature. The way the cross classes are set up in DnD Beyond, or in the UA I should say, is when you reach the certain levels, you can choose different abilities. Well, if you look at the requirements for like null equation is 10th level mage and quantum tunneling is level 14. The thing about sorcerers is they get abilities at 1, 6, 14, and 18, which means at level 14 you actually get to choose whether you want to have null equation or quantum tunneling, which makes it a little more difficult to make this because you need to allow the player to choose which one they want. So I went ahead and made a feature. Oh, go ahead.
Or have you? Do you know how to? Have you figured it out?
Oh, how
By
to
the
do?
way, yeah,
Oh, how to do
because
this?
it's on my head. I don't know how you did it, but it's on my head that you would use the requirement that you have to have chosen a different class feature. So at 14, you choose one, and then for the 18th one, the one you chose, it'll be in that requirement section, and so if you chose quantum tunneling, only the level 10 one will appear
I
because
have
the
done that
quantum.
actually.
That's
So
what you did?
yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, you
Because
had you had that right in your head, and yeah, we'll go over that how that works. And in case you didn't understand what he was talking about, we'll show you how to do that. So this is going to be with the 14th level one. So we're going to choose a class feature. I'm not going to have a snippet code for this one because I don't really know how I want this to show up in the. I don't want this part of it to show up in the character sheet so much. I want the ability you actually choose to show up, but we don't need a snippet showing that, hey, at 14 you got to choose something. That's not really helpful. So the reason why I'm going to leave why this description is left here, when you reach this level you can choose either the following class features then just blank, is because in the compendium you'll see the two options that you're going to have to choose from will show up with their descriptions as well. So we don't want to have too much redundancy here. This is going to be a 14th level class ability. This will be the fourth one that shows up. And this time we actually will check the box has options, and class levels where options known will be 14. If you want to make an option with a character with a subclass feature that has multiple options that you can choose, you can actually just like I could put 14 14 14, which means you could choose 3 of the options at this level, and then you can even add like at level 16 you could choose 2 more options, and that's the notation you'd use. So you could add as many options as you want into a feature that way. Think like the artificer's all the artificer's main ability, where you get to add the special effects to your equipment every day,
yeah.
or the warlock's invocations, how you get to choose multiple ones. That's kind of how they do that in this system, is how you multiple ones there. So it's granted. So now we're going to add an option, and we're going to actually build our 2 different options. That's null equation and quantum tunneling. Just a reminder. We'll start with null equation. Snippet codes in there. And then we're going to have it's going to be required at 14th level. That prerequisite thing he was talking about a minute ago, because this is the first ability that's going to have options, we're not going to use this right now, and we're going to add it in later for the next one we make. So you'll see it come up. So null equation, basically it's going to be an action again. It's going to be another one of those special types. So we're going to be general. The Quandrix abilities don't actually vary all that much, unfortunately. It's one of the problems I do have with them. You have a couple different reactions and a couple different special ones, but that's it. I kind of wish they'd have had a bonus action one instead, for example.
Yeah.
I think that would have added a little more to the character. It resets in a long rest, so we're getting a lot of the same. I mean, they're all good abilities. Don't get me wrong. I have my
Yeah.
issues
I
with the first one, but
like I agree. I think more abilities should have been like action, bonus action. Some of them should have been like short rest as well.
exactly. I like a little variety in those. Like, even if it would have maybe technically made one of the abilities slightly weaker or something. This one also has limited uses, so you can only use null action a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus. So once again, we're going to go into limited use. We're going to check that box there, and we're good to go. Always play it safe and save. So then we're going to cancel out of here, and now we're back to or choose a feature. So we're going to add another option, and this time we're going to add in quantum tunneling. Now, personally, when I reach level 14 as a sorcerer, I would choose quantum tunneling. I think it's the better of the two abilities, but if your campaign's running in some kind of different way, maybe you would choose null equation. I don't know. So you really should leave it as an option for people to choose. Maybe you're just a purist and you like to do them in order. Whatever.
You're crazy.
Yeah, I mean, do what you want to do. But so when you make these, it's good to make it so they can make the choice. Quantum tunneling is fun because it has that nifty tifty. You gain resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. We're going to start by adding those in. We're going to choose the resistance type, and we're going to go ahead and choose bludgeoning. And that is all we have to do for that one, because it's going to be resistance to bludgeoning. Now we're going to make the other ones real quick. We're going to make resistance. And if you look here, it says bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, but this one says from non-magical weapons. That's not what this ability is. It's just bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, even if they're magical. So we have to do it the harder way, where we do one at a time, like this. But you want to make sure you do it this way because that is technically different. And we should try to always make sure our pages are good. So that'd be the last one of those. There's so many different things you can do with the modifier box. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. Like you can do bonus ability checks, bonus to ability score maximums, AC max dex modifier. This is mostly used for equipment that use the modifier feature. You can do a bonus to your acrobatics rolls, different classes, different savings throws, ability checks, all this kind of stuff. There's a lot of different options they have in here. You can, have a choice for more domain spells. I mean, it's some of these are not going to apply to everything, and they might not work. So you have to do a little bit of experiments, but you can. There's a lot of different, ways you can do little different things here. So you can also use this as a way to build things that don't actually show up on the character sheet or do anything. Like you can do, I could choose a bonus to ability checks, but say none of this stuff applied, maybe a die type or what, I could just write in details and type it up, and it would just show up on the character sheet. I think snippet codes are a little easier way of pulling that off with like special actions and things like that. But there's not one set way to do things. It's nice that they have options. Here you can do different resistances, immunities. You can give advantage to ability checks or savings throws, skills, ranged attacks, things like that. There's a lot of things you can add to the different things in the character sheet. So don't check this one out. There's so much buried in this particular modifier value. Of course, you can have it based on ability scores. You can add dice, die types. Like say say you get a ability like a D6 to all your ability checks worth advantage or something. For being really crazy, you can do lots of stuff with this.
You can do a lot with this.
I mean, the same can be said for spells. I mean, there's just a lot in there. Now, when you're making an actual spell, it's a little different, but there's a lot you can do with a lot of these. So don't sell it short. So quantum tunneling also lets you add the ability to walk through walls as a bonus, as just something you can do as part of your turn. So we're gonna make that show up on the character sheet as a special action again. So let's go here, paste that in there. But in my snippet code, I'm only going to want to have, this other part show up. Because this is the action, I'm actually only going to want to have this bottom part here. Additionally, you can move through other objects and creatures as if it's, difficult terrain, take 1d10 force damage, yada yada. That's how we'd make that show up on there. Special, it doesn't have a reset type, so we can do that there.
I like a lot about Quandrix. I feel like they didn't focus on the math aspect enough. Yes, they have many references to math, but just even look at the background, it'd be nice if her clothes were actual math things, but it's just a dumb design.
I mean, I get what they were kind of going for. They're going for some kind of like they want to have the symmetry down to a certain degree. But yeah, I really felt they could have leaned into the math a bit more.
They didn't do well in the actual set. While fractals are, as a math terms, I don't think making a giant, focusing on putting a bunch of +1/+1 counters on a fractal token was their best outcome, because that's kind of a token Tron aspect, big tokens, but mathematically, that doesn't make sense. Oh, like Quandrix's whole plan in the mechanics aren't really that good mathematically.
I think the D&D class does a better job of actually
Yeah,
getting the flavor across, and I think that I think when they made the campaign world, they may not have made it to be a D&D set when they were doing the world building and such, but they did a good job of making a world, making a D&D setting when they made the world.
I think kind of were thinking that this might be an next CD setting just because, it's a magical school, but not run by turfs.
Exactly. So, all right. So, basically, the last class feature that we're going to add to the sorcerer is going to be get your final feature, and essentially, it's going to be the same thing as we did in the last one. So, once again, we get more of a copy paste job. We're going to add one important step that you brought up earlier about how you keep someone from choosing the same feature twice. So, we'll add in their description. It's going to be required level of 18. Display order is going to be 5. Going to have options. Team granted. We'll go through null equation real quick. Paste. And then we're going to have insert term. Paste. Description. So I'm going to require class level 18. But here's where the difference is going to be. So since this is null equation we're making, we're going to have the assumption that you would have to choose the class feature of quantum tunneling first and create that option. And that's going to be your major difference in that first step. You'll do the opposite for quantum tunneling. That's how you're going to end up with what it does is it creates a check. So essentially, if you have chosen quantum tunneling, then you can choose null equation. You just got to choose it. Once you choose it, you're fine. Now, you would think that the is granted, it might be a way to get around this. So you wouldn't have to, if we've made that a prerequisite, but you added is granted, then you wouldn't have to choose it, right? That's how I kind of assumed you could get around that in the maker. It doesn't work. Don't do that. What ends up happening is it creates this repetitive loop where it's granted, but then you can't choose it, and every time you back out, it ends up breaking it, and you end up getting the ability like however many times you try to add it on. So it ends up being there, but it always ends up throwing up a flag in the character builder. That's not what is granted is going to help you with. Is granted, I don't think is something you're going to use at all when you have options. It's kind of a weird thing. So I'm not sure if this should even exist within options, but maybe there's an option where you something that would actually work with that. Let's talk about the differences in the wizard. In the wizard, I'll stick with this subclass here, so I don't have to go make a new one real quick. But I'll go back through and kind of show you what we want to do differently. The first thing you do, of course, is you don't use charisma, you use intelligence for your spellcasting ability. That's going to be a big change there. Second, in Quadrax spells, since you still learn the spells, you get add them to your spell book for free, but you still prepare the same way. It basically boils down to you need to take all of these off of here. The only one you're going to want to keep is guidance because it gives you it's a cantrip you're getting, and if you don't add the cantrip on, then your wizard won't have it, right?
Yeah.
But all the spells, don't add them onto the wizard. What you do is when you level up and you're supposed to get, enlarge or spike growth at level 3, for example, you just add those to your spell book free of charge. You don't pay for them, and they're just in your spell book. It's still good for the wizard. It gives them more spells to choose from. Especially, look at level 5. You're getting Haste and Aura of Vitality. These are two very strong spells. Aura of Vitality is a healing ability, right? That's not something that wizards even get most of the time. So for Quandrix, it's a really nice ability. it really plays at the point that in Strixhaven, there's not really clerics. They don't seem to be gods. A lot of the subclasses are getting the ability to cast healing spells built
Yeah,
into their arcane abilities.
Quandrix is they have so powerful spells, Guiding Bolt, Enlarge, Reduce, Aura Vitality, Haste, Freedom Movement. All these are amazing spells.
Actually, speaking of which, I suppose Aura Vitality isn't normally on the wizard spell list. What we'd have to do, and I can't remember which of these other ones aren't on the wizard spell list. Now that I think of it, we'd actually have to go through here and add spells here with Aura Vitality. What this one does is it adds it to the spells that you're allowed to pick. That's what this additional specific spells section does for you. So now, when I go to level up, I can choose Aura of Vitality to put in my spellbook. That's not normally an option for wizards. So that's where you'd want to put those spells into. If you wanted to play it safe and just make sure that they were all in there, you could go through and just add all the spells. But I think Spike Growth might be another one that you need to add. And I'm not sure about the other ones. I should have looked that up ahead of time, but
Probably should have.
probably should have. But add any spells that aren't on a spell list that you want to have on a spell list here, and there'll be spells that you can pick to add to your spell book as a wizard. As a druid or a cleric, for example, these would be spells that you would automatically get to know and you get to prepare spells from. But they wouldn't necessarily be spells that were always on your prepared list. That's going to be our big change. I will, like I said before, I'm going to put these documents up on our Google Drive. We'll share the link with you. In that same drive, you'll actually see other other subclasses that I've made that you can use on D&D Beyond. We'll probably do a video for those later, but if we don't, you can use the same methods and copy paste and make them for yourself. I'm probably going to make all of them and throw them into that drive whether we make videos or not, to make it so that you guys can just copy paste and do things. So have a good night, and I hope you enjoyed. Yeah. Give us a goodbye, Tyler.
I'm dead inside.
Oh, okay. So typical.
Now, bye.
Bye.